Hello everyone, Pulse here again to bring you yet another episode of Forging Fantasy, EverQuest Next. Now in today's episode we're going to be talking about something I find to be really interesting and potentially amazing and game-changing for EverQuest Next, that being that SOE is in collaboration with an indie group called Storybricks. What do these guys bring to the table, and why does their addition to the EverQuest Next development process mean really good things for all of us watching this increasingly interesting MMO? Well, we're going to talk about it right here in this episode. In addition, at the end there, I'm going to add on my answer to the newest roundtable question, and in all honesty, I think it's a pretty good one. So let's get right into it. We have a lot to go over today. I want to start out with Storybricks and to give a just brief overview of who these guys are. Storybricks is essentially a small indie group of what I would consider some serious game development pedigree, and they've come together with this sort of singular unified mission, which is to develop a truly engaging AI in a way that really propels immersion, storytelling, combat, and many more aspects of a gaming universe to just impressive new heights and believability. Now, these people, I've looked into them a little bit, and they're all kinds of awesome in my book. They all just seem very passionate and driven to really take AI to the next step and really make a nice leap from our current AI standings in gaming, especially in the MMO front when it comes to EverQuest Next. They're really trying to take it to another level. I would really suggest, if you're interested in these guys at all, to look at their dev diaries. I'll have a link down below in the description. I do want to say that they're about a year old at this point, so even though they're a little bit old, but I have to say they're still worth watching because it really gives a sense of how passionate and driven they are towards getting this AI to become something truly amazing. So let's move on though. I'll blabber about the Storybricks guys and how I feel about their mission towards AI as it is. But I want to focus now on an interview that was done by Junkie's Nation with Terry Michaels of SOE, and then alongside him were some members of the Storybricks team. Now, it's quite a long bit of text, so I'm not going to read out the whole thing here in this video. Instead, I'm going to put a link down below in the description so you guys can check out the full thing for yourself if you're interested. But instead, throughout the video, I'm just going to go over what I think is kind of the discussion worthy and the more eye-catching questions and answers that they talked about. So let's get to the first question here. The first one is, what line, if any, is drawn between interaction between quote-unquote human NPCs, such as guards, merchants, etc., and then the quote-unquote monster NPCs, and what distinctions can be made between interactions between these two groups other than initial kill-on-sight status with the players? Can players in essence abandon the entire world of human NPCs in favor of going native among the monsters? Now, the answer came from the Storybricks guys, and they said, we're not going to talk about the design specifics for EverQuest Next. However, we can say that we are creating a unified AI architecture for combat and non-combat behaviors, which means that NPCs inside combat could potentially have a much greater range of reactions to player characters than just kill on sight, and a lot more varied goals as explained in the presentation of rallying calls and vice versa. NPCs' daily lives could also be affected by the potential occurrence of combat either as a threat or a goal. Now, I like this one for a couple reasons. One, the answer from Storybricks kind of gives a very nice overview of what they're trying to do here in my eyes. They're trying to just show us that the AI that they're trying to implement is going to really give a much more broad and an all-around more engaging sort of scenario when you're playing the game. So no matter what, if you're interacting with them in combat or non-combat situations, the NPCs, be it enemy or friendly, are going to react differently as time goes on, different things going on with the world. It's just a very nice thing. In addition, that bit kind of at the end where they talk about the previous presentation on rallying calls. Now, I found this interesting because I personally haven't seen that presentation, and I'm very interested to try and find it, but the way that they use it in the answer here suggests to me that what they can do with the rallying cries, which is, for those who may not be acquainted with, are essentially SOE's ability to sort of very quickly kind of patch in or update their world with challenges for the players to conquer, or different ways that they can alter the world. One of the examples they keep throwing out is that they can sort of alter a large chunk of space by making an earthquake happen, and then that generates a large crevice in the world where all of a sudden there's a huge crack in the foundation, and you can look all the way down to some lava and stuff like that, and maybe there's dungeons down there, maybe there's monsters coming out of it, or what have you. That's one of the examples they've given with the rallying calls. And the thing is, that means that what they can do with the rallying calls also is they can change the AI. So one of the examples I had in my head is alongside this crevice thing, right? They have an earthquake happen. So maybe there's a city nearby, and the NPCs that are normally friendly are just scared out of their mind. Maybe they've lost their wares, so now they're more aggressive, trying to sell their stuff, or maybe they become thieves, or just the basic stuff. Maybe they're just more afraid, and so they don't want to interact with you as a player. The possibilities are quite endless here with that, and I think that's a really, really cool addition to the game, because the rallying calls were a pretty cool thing by themselves, but the fact that they can potentially also alter the NPCs as well is really damn cool. That's just a really nice addition in my opinion. Now let's move on to the next question here. The next one is, are human AI equivalent mobs going to be designed such that it is required that no more than X people can fight said mobs at the same time, given that mobs can potentially run away at any time if they are outnumbered, outclassed, or outskilled? If so, will they have instancing-like abilities, an example being temporary domes that prevent people from entering or exiting where they are fighting, that prevent more player characters from showing up and always causing the mobs to run? Now the answer came from Terry Michaels this time, his answer being, this sounds exactly like the kind of thing we do not want in EverQuest Next. Artificial limits, mechanisms that enforce these limits are not the types of solutions we are designing for this game. We will just have to wait for more information about our combat to see what we have in mind. Now I like this because they make sure to point out that this is absolutely not what they want to go for in EverQuest Next, because they've been very clear as to say that they want the world to be a huge part of the game. They don't want to use too much instancing if possible, and this just really builds upon that sort of drive to keep this game about the world, and there's so many mechanics going into that already. I feel like this is what they should be doing, and I'm glad to hear it come from Terry Michaels himself. It's really nice to see. In addition, I like that they say that they wouldn't utilize such things like a temporary dome ability, for example, to limit people if the number of players on screen are too high to face a challenge. Instead, what they would be going for is having this changing UI and the ability to alter it quickly and have the AI itself learn, so to speak, so that it can alter the experience. So maybe sometimes it will run if it just gets completely overwhelmed way too quickly. But maybe they could do some other stuff, like if it gets to so many people, all of a sudden he runs and everyone who follows gets to him, and all of a sudden you are in his territory and he's got a lot more to play with. And the possibilities, again, are pretty damn endless with this. They could do quite a lot if they altered the way the AI thinks to be more intelligible. And this alongside their ability to alter the world with the rallying cries, along with any other tools they have at their disposal for very quick sort of patch-ins. It just means that they can do quite a lot with the way that the AI from the mobs, especially in this kind of scenario, to me screams like world boss. In this world boss kind of scenario, they can really make the fights more engaging. So let's move on to the next one here. Will mobs make tactical errors based on things like emotion or pressure? Now, Terry Michaels speaks out first here, saying there are a lot of factors that can go into the decision making of the creatures in the world. We do not believe that a system that always makes the perfect decision is either fun or engaging to players. And then in addition, Storybricks comes along and adds this: we want the combat AI to be responsive to opportunities, exploit player mistakes, take advantage of newly created terrain, etc. Creatures are capable of gauging the utility of each of their abilities in real time, how desirable each given action is. This means that a lot of factors can be taken into account in these calculations. Emotions and pressure are just two possible examples of things that they could be considered. Now, I like this because emotion and pressure, I feel, are just two things you don't really think coincide with video game AI. They don't really mix in my mind. You usually have just very static, like was mentioned earlier, kill on sight type of actions, and they don't really react to losing The only real mechanic of the sort that I've seen, and it's a very annoying one, is when mobs just like reach a certain health threshold and then they run for their lives and make you waste your time because you have to chase them down. Instead, this is a much more kind of gradual change from that idea that was shown in older MMOs, like running away at health. Instead, this is going to be more about the actual thought process that's going on in the AI system, so that they can replicate the feelings of emotion or pressure. So in the pressure's case, they would potentially run away, or the emotion of being scared. So maybe they cower, and so they're under pressure, and they can't fight as strongly as they were previously. Or the opposite of that being obviously their emotion state of being just completely overwhelmed, so they go berserk. So any strategy you had prior that was killing it, maybe it just completely changes because this monster goes absolutely berserk and batshit crazy and has reckless abandon, and you have to adjust to the situation because the mob just out of nowhere reacted on its sort of artificial emotion. And that's really interesting to me, that they've made sure to point out that emotion and pressure are potential calculators in the AI system at work here. Now, the final two questions here, I'm going to go through both of them at the same time instead of one at a time because I feel like they go together quite nicely. The first one here is, will shopkeepers, for example, change their prices or maybe even give a free beer based on your actions? Now, Storybricks comes along and says, you may have heard in previous Storybricks interviews, this is our go-to example for explaining how Storybricks can improve a game world. You will have to wait and see just what we were working with in SOE to create as the team releases more information about the game. And then the next question was, will NPCs recognize certain iconic pieces of gear? This is a neat idea, certainly something worth shooting for. This again touches on NPC memories and their knowledge of the world, like everything else it seems. Expect to learn more in the future. Now these two were pretty cool in my opinion. One, because I actually hadn't heard of this thing about Storybricks coming along and saying this is something that is a legitimate thing that's going to happen, where the NPCs recognize you as a player, as a person, as a hero or villain in their world, and they can react to you by giving you prices or maybe giving you away things, and that's very cool. But I kind of twisted that example on its head in my brain anyway, and thought, well, what if this is the case? So you have a hero in the city, right? And the NPCs know him because that player, when he logs in and plays, sits at his computer and maybe he role plays in this city, or maybe he interacts with this city a lot, maybe because that's just his favorable location in terms of aesthetic or something. But the NPCs over time know him. And then on the other side of that, you have maybe the shady character from out of town kind of thing going on, where maybe this character doesn't go to this place often, and as such, maybe based on, like it was saying, the iconic pieces of gear being a potential thing as well, maybe you have somebody that comes in and he plays kind of a shady character in the way that he looks, or maybe he just hasn't been around town often enough, so maybe the NPCs react fearfully, or they decide not to sell wares to him, or maybe he's banned from the auction house or the bar, so he cannot get his free beer, and that sort of thing. That all sounds really awesome to me. Now, the next bit about where he was talking about the iconic pieces of gear, the thing that stood out to me here that was most interesting was that they really just nailed down this idea that the NPCs and the mobs in the game will have a sense of memory, so to speak, and they will have knowledge of the world, so that they can potentially react differently just the longer the game is out, pretty much. After it hits release, after beta, and then long after that, after players have gotten their hands on this game and played, the fact is that this idea of NPC memories comes into play. Now, we don't know how strong it is in terms of, will a NPC remember something from a long time, like will 6 months of time go by in our real life, and that 6 months will correlate to maybe a year, 2 years, or maybe less time, what have you, but a substantial amount of time will go by anyway. Will the NPC remember stuff from like a long time ago and just surprise you because they may know you and go, oh, I haven't seen you in such and such amount of time? And as I've said throughout this, the possibilities are just ridiculously high with this sort of drive to bring the AI forward in EverQuest Next. It all just sounds really fantastic. I guess let's close with that. Let's go to my thoughts, really. I think that Storybricks and their involvement with EverQuest Next and SOE is fantastic, if you haven't already gathered that. And I really feel like the way that they are attempting to implement AI is really the next step in bringing that sense of immersion to the player base, especially in an MMO setting where we just really haven't had that, and more importantly, where we the players make our own stories and adventures. Because in a story-driven game where you play a linear experience, the AI can go through their scripted stuff, but in an MMO, scripted stuff breaks the immersion a lot of times. So instead, the solution is this really updated and reactive and all around more engaging AI, and I'm really glad to see that this is where they're going with EverQuest Next. It all sounds awesome, and I can't wait to hear more from the Storybricks guys about what they've brought to the development of EverQuest Next. So good stuff all around from these guys. I'm fairly impressed, and I'm really excited to hear more. So finally, let's get into the roundtable question, shall we? The question of the week, I guess, is what they've been doing with it, is do you want to build in public or private in Landmark? Now, the answer choices they have here is, let me see, I don't care about building under any circumstances. They've gotten, like, barely any people to answer that question, or with that answer. I'm not sure who would want to be interested in EverQuest Next Landmark and answer this question with I don't care about building, because it seems pointless. I keep saying this when I answer these. Why do they have these answers on the damn thing? Just limit to 4 answers if you're gonna put a stupid one like that, because if people are gonna answer it with that, then honestly their opinions don't matter on it doesn't. Who cares? If you don't want to build in Landmark, then you shouldn't be playing Landmark and giving your impressions on if you want to build in public or private. The next answer choice they have here is letting other people see what I'm building would add to my enjoyment factor. That is currently the highest voted for answer. The next one is I want people to see my finished product, but not my progress. That one's got a fairly high number as well. I'd rather keep all my building in instances and decide who can see it at all times. And then finally, I love building and would do it anywhere and anyhow. I don't care whether other people can see me or not. Now, originally, I picked that final choice here with I love building and I'll do it anywhere and anyhow, and I don't care whether people can see me or not. And that's because in Landmark itself, I really feel that it doesn't matter to me that much. But when I thought about it, I feel like with the way that they're going about EverQuest Next and Landmark together, and instead of trying to think of them as 2 separate experiences, I've been trying to think of them as one thing, like just all jammed up together. And even though you maybe have 2 separate clients and everything like that, they are one experience together. And after thinking about it, I decided I would go with the most voted for one, and that's kind of interesting that this is the most voted for. I honestly thought most people would click that they wanted everything instance off, but instead they've decided to go for the other one, which is letting other people see what I'm building would add to my enjoyment. Now, I don't know if it's going to add to my enjoyment factor if I'm building where other people can see me, but the thing is, the whole experience about EverQuest Next and Landmark is that you're building in the world. So the world that you are making is actually the world you are making, not an instance off version that is going to be maybe pasted off into Landmark or EverQuest Next down the road. Instead, what you're building in the world is actually the world, and that's the most important part. And I went back to that answer thinking, you know what, this is all one experience. They're all about the world being the biggest thing. And the only real drawback to this, and the only real reason I could see people wanting the instance version, is obviously griefers. The problem is you're gonna get griefers no matter what, guys, and I would honestly just rather have this sense of the world mattering and them deal with the griefers as it happens, rather than everything instance off and you lose just really the whole purpose of the game and the game world. So I went back to that, and that is my answer for this question. I want to do it out in the world. I don't really mind if other people see me do it, but when I'm out in the world, my accomplishments out there are actually part of the world that everyone is playing, and it's not just my own thing. And that's really what EverQuest Next seems to be about. So that is my answer for that one today. And that'll do it for me, guys. Honestly, that's quite a lot to go over already, so that will end this episode of Forging Fantasy EverQuest Next. let me know with a comment down below how you guys feel about Storybricks and the potential game-changing AI that their involvement could bring to EverQuest Next. Also, if you could share with me your preference with the roundtable question, and let me know if you don't mind public viewings of your projects as you're building them, or would you rather have complete control over who sees your work and have it in an instance-off area. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully you found this video a little bit enjoyable and perhaps a tiny bit informative or thought-provoking also. And if so, I'd very much appreciate a thumbs up, a subscribe, a comment down below on anything discussed today, MMO or gaming related in the slightest. Thanks again for watching. This has been Pulse, and I will see you on the next one.